Having a wonderful time here. We're really privileged to be able to be holding this at the aquarium. We got an incredible behind the scenes tour yesterday, seeing all kinds of wonderful things that they're doing here. Very impressive. We're looking forward to hearing some more today. And I think one of the things we'll do to speed things along, I think Reba's just going to do a roll call of who's here rather than go. We've had a chance to talk to each other. We know what we're all about. And it's really great for me to be able to see people in person and wonderful to interact with everyone. So, Reba, did you want to start with that?
Let's do. All right, if you could just answer if you're here. Dr. Carl Wenner.
Here.
Mauricio Valadrian.
Here.
Marit Payute. Jane Hartline. Here. Mark Stern.
Here.
Kelly Timchak.
Here.
Dr. Shristi Kamal.
Yes.
Liza Jane McAllister. Jim Hammett.
Yes, here.
Commissioner Mark Labhart. All right.
Is Liza Jane, are you online? She told me she was going to try to join us.
You should be.
Okay, well, hopefully she'll be able to participate. Commissioner Labhart is on a cruise. Suffering. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of a change in the agenda that you've got. Shristi is going to need to leave us a little bit early. So we have her on the agenda towards the end, and instead we're going to move item 11. If you look on the back page, I'm just going to move that up to right after the break. And so we can get Shristi on the road, but we really need to hear about that review of the House bill. And then I want to just bring this up for everybody. We're very fortunate to have Sarah Reif joining us today. And I've asked Sarah, as we'll talk about more, this is a transformative bill, transformative for the department, transformative for the OCRF. And it behooves us to really think about this. So in that section 11, Shristi's going to just give us a historical footing and go through the blow by blow of that heroic effort. And I've asked Sarah to give us the department's perspective on that bill. What does that bill mean to the department? How do they see the OCRF with the new funding that we have? How does that fit into the department's view? And then for each of you, I'd like for you to be, we're not going to make any decisions today, but I want you all to be thinking about in this meeting how you view it. What is your personal view? How do you see this monumental thing that has happened that could transform our committee, our fund? And what do you see of that? How have you been thinking about it? Do you have a vision of what we might do? And I want to hear from each of you how you think about it. And maybe that you haven't thought about it, but if you have, I want to hear what you're thinking. And then in our future meetings, we will build on that and try to really not miss this historic opportunity to really make an impact on what happens in Oregon. So that's what our agenda 11 is going to be. And again, that'll happen after the break. So to get back to where we are, we need, I guess we're pretty much ready to go to the approval of minutes, Reba?
First,
Or the members of the public.
recognize members of the public online. So it looks like we have Haley Brazier who's joined. Thanks for joining. Marie Newmiller, Mary Jo Hedrick, and Melissa Ousley. And of course, Sarah Reif. And then I see Maria Zapetis. Thanks everyone for joining today.
So is there no way on those are all people that are online, right? Those little icons, we can't really get their identities up there so we know who's, I want to see if,
I have to go to that laptop and then I could click on the people to show.
I just wonder who, you know, if Liza Jane shows up, if she,
Not on yet.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. So you can see that. You can tell that by looking, okay, great. All right, well, why don't we just move on to the review and approval of the minutes?
And then I could click on the people to show.
I just wonder who, you know, have anyone who's willing to propose that? All right, great. So you can see that. You can tell that by looking, okay.
I move to approve the March 3rd, 2026 meeting minutes with the continued authority to correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation.
You have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mark Stern. All in favor? That has passed. Okay, so we're gonna fortunately be able to hear some more from the Marine Resource Program presentation from Justin Ainsworth.
Yes.
Great. Justin, are you ready to talk to us about what you're up to?
I sure am. And I'll ask Riva to get some slides up. And I guess it's fine just to sit here. I'll try to see you all rather than stand up there. Okay, good.
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Justin, are you ready to talk to us?
So, yeah, thank you. And welcome everyone. And my name's Justin Ainsworth. I'm the Marine Resources Program Manager. My office is right over here at Hatfield Marine Science Center. And thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I'm glad we're here at the aquarium, and what a great place to see and tell the story about the Oregon's marine environment, and show you why the work that we do it really does matter. And this is a great place where you can see these species. It's really hard to see them when you just standing on the beach and looking out there, and you can't really see all of what's going on underneath. And after I talk, Scott will be talking and show some cool pictures, I'm sure, of underwater stuff. So it's great here at the aquarium. You can see it just by walking down the halls. So I'll walk you through our Marine Resources Program, and I'll also connect our work to the State Wildlife Action Plan. And then I'll close with some exciting update about the Oregon is Worth Protecting campaign. If you haven't heard much about it, or maybe you have heard about that, but I'll just touch on that a little bit. I hope this presentation inspires some curiosity and continued stewardship of marine resources, and creates a deeper connection to nearshore and coastal habitats and species. So next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about the program itself. And so the ODF&W's Marine Resources Program, or MRP, you might hear me say MRP, encompasses all 362 miles of Oregon's coast line and bays. So we do work on the open ocean, on the beaches, and inside the bays and estuaries. It extends out 200 nautical miles offshore, and MRP has primary management responsibility over 3 miles right off the coast, which make up the territorial sea, where we consider that the waters of the state. In many cases, MRP shares co-management responsibility with federal, regional, tribal, and international decision makers. So we work in many different areas where we're working with other states and even with other governments or other countries. So our headquarters, as I mentioned, is right here at Hatfield, but we also have staff in Astoria, we have staff in Charleston, Brookings, Adair, and also in Oregon City. So a variety of these personnel, we work together and cover all aspects of the program, including marine biology, ecology, fishery management, policy, research, social science, technical data, and outreach is also a big part of our work. So what you see here, these 3 pillars of building understanding about marine species, habitats, and how people rely on them, working for the benefit of Oregon's species, ecosystems, and communities, and acting today to ensure resources and opportunity for the future. These are kind of the 3 pillars that kind of guide our program, and I'll be walking through each one of these. So talking about our stewardship, science, and service to communities who depends on Oregon's coastal resources. Next slide, please. So first, just talking about building understanding. And this is understanding marine fish, wildlife, and habitats and our connections with them. It's essential that we make the right decisions about sustaining the ocean and estuary resources. So building understanding is really the foundation of all marine program work. This includes science, monitoring, collaboration, and all this helps us understand what is happening in Oregon's nearshore and how people interact with it. We rely on both rigorous scientific data and also community knowledge. So there's just a few examples of building understanding. And if you have any questions along the way, I should mention, please, this is a small enough group, we can have a little discussion, raise hand and, maybe ask questions about the pictures or anything. So
I have a question. Is that a sea cow?
It looks like
that is, you were paying attention yesterday.
An old iteration, yeah.
Next slide, please, Reba. So the next pillar, just kind of, and this is a really kind of high level overview of the program. So working for Oregon's species, ecosystems, and people. And our work often reaches beyond Oregon's coastline and marine issues across boundaries. So recognizing Oregon's voice in regional and federal forums is a key part of our role. So what I have here on the screen is recommending technical and scientific solutions. This could be, bringing things to our Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission to make rules, representing Oregon and regional groups, policy councils, and commissions. This could be our work at the federal level. The Pacific Fishery Management Council is a regional decision-making body that includes Washington, Oregon, California, and Idaho. And this is where a lot of our work happens at federal level, say, setting regulations on federal fisheries that cross the state lines. And bringing partners and community members together. This is something that we do in all of our work. I have, as an example, just in 2 days, I'll be holding a public meeting to meet with commercial crab fishermen. We're constantly reaching out and working in our communities to make sure that we are bringing that expertise and local knowledge to our decision making. Next slide, please. So taking action. Here's a few examples of the work we do. And so MRP works to ensure resources and opportunity for today and into the future. This is where research translates into action on the water. And our goal is to maintain ecologically functioning systems while also supporting Oregon's strong fishing traditions. So a few of these actions include managing annual and seasonal catch limits by collecting harvest information from recreational and commercial fisheries. We manage impacts on marine species and habitats to ensure long-term sustainability and continued fishing opportunities. A lot of our work is developing policy and regulations to manage fisheries, within sustainable levels, and working with agency partners to enforce the rules, keep us safe, and protect fish and wildlife. The next slide, please. So just making some connections about why this work matters. At the Marine Program, we conduct a tremendous breadth of work, everything from monitoring marine mammals to mapping rocky reefs, improving stock assessments. And by stock assessments, I mean, these are very formal processes where we assess the population of fish and determine what are the appropriate harvest levels. So stock assessments, and also a big part of our work is reducing marine life entanglement risk when it comes to the crab fishery in particular. The State Wildlife Action Plan guides these efforts, helping us identify the species, habitats, climate impacts, and adaptive actions needed to help protect Oregon's marine environment. So one of the things we do is we develop fishery management plans. And those are, other things we do, we partner on renewable ocean energy siting. Certainly is a topic that has been, less in the news now, but it's certainly, we're still doing lots of work in addressing potential offshore wind energy development, you probably are aware. We also do work through the Ocean Acidification and Hypoxia Council to understand the effects of ocean acidification on marine species and environment. We operate marine reserves. We have a number of those up and down the coast. We use the marine reserves like living laboratories And we convene advisory groups for fisheries like market squid and bay clam, recreational fishing, all sorts of advisory groups on fishing related and also about conservation and about our marine reserves. We collaborate with industry to do things like bycatch reduction research. So altogether, stock assessments, these examples I talked about of mapping habitats like Scott works on. Harmful algal bloom monitoring is another big project we work on that is helping, make sure we have, safe seafood. We also do estuary surveys, and all these feed directly into statewide conservation and management decisions. So next slide, please. Here are a few key habitats that we work in. These habitats support biodiversity, fisheries, recreation, and also cultural values. They're also where community engagement is the strongest, making them ideal for outreach and stewardship projects. So these key habitat types here, just wanted to show some examples. Kelp beds, eelgrass beds, rocky intertidal, and nearshore reefs. These are some of Oregon's most important nearshore habitats. There are also places where our marine program does some more visible and meaningful work. Just want to give a few examples. First, our nearshore ecology program, which includes the marine reserves and the habitat teams, which Scott is part of. This gives us long-term place-based data on rocky reefs, kelp forests, intertidal areas, and nearshore species. These areas, like marine reserves, act as living laboratories where you can track ecological change, understand community impacts, and study how protected areas function over time. Another team I'd like to highlight too that does work in these areas is our fisheries research team. And they help us characterize reefs and the fish communities that live among them, and also the impact of these species by some stressors like hypoxia. So this work informs stock assessments and policy decisions and helps us understand how climate-driven changes might be reshaping some of these systems here. Another project I'd like to highlight does a lot of work in eelgrass beds and in estuaries, and this is our SEEKR team, which is part of our shellfish program, and the SEEKR stands for Shellfish and Estuary Assessment of Coastal Oregon, so abbreviated SEEKR. This team has been around for over 15 years, funded by recreational shellfish license holders. They document the distribution and health of critical habitats like eelgrass beds and shellfish populations, doing surveys in many of our coastal estuaries. And finally, just want to highlight our recreational fishery sampling programs. If any of you are sport fishers that go out and fish in the ocean, maybe you come back to the dock and you have your catch. Hopefully you got a full cooler. You might see some ODF&W staff, and those are recreational fishery sampling programs. They help us understand how anglers and visitors use the nearshore areas and interact with these key species. And this also helps us engage with our users.
You need to get them a little thing to put on their hat that says, "Not a game warden."
That's one of the things that we try to train and prepare our samplers. That's often a confusion out there too. So yeah, we work closely with in these habitats with partners, so universities, tribes, conservation groups, divers, community science programs. So we do work like in expanding, kelp monitoring, mapping eelgrass, study rocky reef ecosystems, and next slide, please. Building resilience. This is something we've more and more I'm thinking about in our work. And building nearshore resilience is very important because habitat and species are on the front lines of climate change, shifting ocean conditions, and increasing human use. So a couple of examples of how we're building resilience. Our marine reserves and comparison areas, I talked about a little bit about those. We have long-term data sets, so we're trying to understand changes over time. Second, habitat mapping and nearshore surveys help us detect changes in things like kelp canopy extent, how changes in eelgrass are occurring, changes in the seafloor communities, things like that. And we're also supporting resilience through sustainable fisheries. Fishing, both recreational and commercial, has long been part of Oregon's traditions and history. And so keeping those ecosystems functioning as changing conditions and, trying to understand that so we can help support fisheries through time. And also just want to stress the value of partnerships, both with other agencies, with outside groups and things like that. So it's, we're working closely with universities and different communities there too. So together, all of these efforts help maintain ecological, cultural, economic resilience of Oregon's nearshore. And your support here through the OCRF helps us expand this understanding. So next slide, please. Certainly wanted to put in a recognition of the support from OCRF, and definitely makes a difference in the work that we've been doing that I just highlighted. Just real measurable impacts to our Oregon ocean and coastal resources. So these investments have helped ODF&W collect data. I don't have them up there listed here, but I'll just name a couple. I think Scott talked to some of you yesterday about replacement of the ROV. And so there was certainly with some support from OCRF, really appreciate that. Continue that great work. Let's see, another example that was, let's see, Oregon Marine Reserves Program received an award to help with an evaluation. So together, these work help us work with some key state wildlife action plan species and habitat. So appreciate that. This has ensured a rigorous, transparent, and science-based evaluation, or talking about the Marine Reserves Award, again, that help evaluate the Marine Reserves Program. And there was another award in 2023 that I'm less familiar with this one, but I think it went to some OSU scientists, and we were part of that collaboration. It was a project focusing on mapping yellow eye rockfish habitat. This helps inform groundfish management and maintain sustainable fishing harvest opportunities. So definitely appreciate the support, and will help us help Oregon see that the ocean is worth protecting. That's a segue to the next slide. So the Oregon is Worth Protecting campaign. If this is started this year or last year, I believe. And the first tumbler that came out, this is a partnership with Jamba Juice. The first tumbler that came out had wildlife species, and we have a new one this year that highlights marine species that we're really excited to promote. And I'm promoting it right now. These tumblers from Jamba Juice, and there's a portion of this goes to funding conservation efforts. So really think this is a really great time to talk to you all because, in addition to this, we also we have the approval of the State Wildlife Action Plan, which has, a very relevant guiding policy for marine species and habitats, in addition to statewide. And then also this, I think, as we just mentioned, we heard that later today, you'll be hearing about House Bill 4134 and that funding. We're certainly looking forward to that at the agency to see how we can incorporate that funding into the Oregon is Worth Protecting and State Wildlife Action Plan. So on this tumbler that is out now, we have the sunflower sea star, bull kelp, yellow eye rockfish, southern resident orca, puffin, and the taupe shark. And I think most of these species you can find here at the aquarium. No longer have the orca on site here, but used to be one here. So that is quick run through of a very large and complex program. Happy to take if you have time. If you have any questions.
I just have a question because I was plugging you earlier about it. But when did the marine program come into being?
Really good question. And historically, we used to be part of a region. We used to have in the agency, like a northeast, a northwest, southeast, southwest regions, and also a marine region. And at some point, you're testing my.
Oh, sorry.
Before my time.
Yeah.
But no, good question. But I believe in the 90s, kind of a guess. We changed from a region to a program, and all that matters is internally. But we've been doing work in the marine realm for quite a long time. And we used to be part of course, I have to look at the history of the agency. There was a Fish and Wildlife Commission before that. But just a quick little anecdote. When I was in grad school, I relied on research that was done at Hatfield in the 1960s. That building there has been, since the late 60s. So at that time, ODF&W was doing research in the marine realm, whether or not it was the Marine Resources Program or not, it was under a different name, but we've been there for a while.
Yeah, that's very good.
Can I ask a question? Before I ask, I will add another fun fact about the tumbler. I learned that sell these, the Java salespeople have to learn 2 fun facts about the species as they sell it. So that's super cool, in my opinion. My question is more around the kelp and eelgrass habitats. So in addition to research and monitoring, are you, and I might have missed that, do you engage in restoration efforts? And if so, are there defined attributes, matrices? What do you use to assess restoration efforts?
Really good question. Kelp restoration right now is really in its infancy in terms of how to really do that. Our work is mostly about just monitoring, doing and funding different levels of aerial surveys. That's one of the things that Scott could be much more informed about that. And we are working with groups like the Oregon Kelp Alliance that are doing some, pilot work on how to. It's a different concept than just planting like you would a plant on the riparian zone or something like that, but encouraging spores to settle in certain areas. And part of that is also urchin culling to help support where the kelp could might reproduce naturally to help them survive. So it's a little bit different than restoration here, but otherwise. And the eelgrass is another real difficult thing. It's hard to just transplant those. We have tried that in some areas. It's not terribly successful. So eelgrass restoration, I think our approach is more about conserving and protecting areas that have eelgrass rather than trying to minimize future losses.
What are the threats to eelgrass? Is it water quality or sedimentation or?
All of those things, and future developments that might be affecting shorelines that could lead to some of those stressors to increase sedimentation. There are certain activities like oyster growing that we're looking at closely to see how impactful those activities are on eelgrass, but trying to also find a balance there too.
I'm curious. So I spend a lot of time thinking about how crucial the work that you all do and how much of it determines the impact that us as humans have in just all the ways in which we're dependent to our natural resources. And so on one of your slides, you were talking about how it is of such importance to enhance opportunities for future generations. And then I also think about how are we engaging with communities that don't have a specialized affinity to this sort of work. And so I'd be curious to know, I know that you have a lot of work with universities, but are there community partnerships that you're particularly proud of being engaged with? Or in which other ways are we connecting with community that maybe don't see this as something that is in their sphere of interest?
Yeah, great question, because it is true. The more high profile work we do would be, say, with recreational fisheries or commercial fisheries and setting regulations. And then, we have press releases out there, and that's more high profile. I think I would maybe highlight the work our Marine Reserves team does in that, there's different community groups that are, so we're engaging more with the public that you have to have some interest in that, but it's not the more traditional, stakeholders that we have in. And so those community groups that work with our Marine Reserves team is a good example of that. And there's different outreach events, and we try to get out to different places. And traditionally, maybe we would go to sports shows to talk about our work, but trying to be present at some more community groups and community events, I think is one way we can do that. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so those different community groups that are interested in marine reserves represent different backgrounds of conservation and interests like that. So, yeah, maybe.
Can I offer
Sure.
a specific thought there, which is with respect to the marine reserves.
Yeah.
One of that program has an ecological sampling branch and a human dimensions branch.
Yeah.
The previous human dimensions researcher there initiated a project with a professor, Danny Pimentel, I think his last name is, at University of Oregon, who's interested in virtual reality and digital interactions with habitats. They did a project at Otter Rock Marine Reserve where they created a whole interactive exhibit and used Google Glasses to create a situation where you could visualize the habitats underwater when you're standing on the shoreline and actually see the surface in front of you. So that project was one that that sort of, was an effort to explicitly to get into those target audiences that might not be, the muddy, salty types otherwise.
I'm thinking back 10 years, last time we sort of dealt with this topic and this was in Hawaii, where they stressed the importance of marine reserves in terms of replenishment zones for the surrounding fisheries. And they were documenting a lot of dispersal from those reserves in terms of reproduction and having to help the commercial fisheries outside those reserves. Is the same thing true in these marine reserves in these coastal waters? Is there much of an effect outside those reserves in terms of influencing numbers?
Good question. Yeah, and each of the reserves, the 5 main reserves, protected areas, have a comparison area. And so some of the ecological studies that Scott mentioned, we're doing work in the comparison areas, which are open to fishing, to marine reserves areas, which are closed to fishing. And so trying to determine, those effects is one thing that we're trying to look at that. The marine reserves, as they were set up, were not intended to be that kind of nursery area there. I think they would have had maybe some different considerations in larger areas. And so they're not, and so I don't think there's any real measurable effect. You might see some differences in fish numbers and fish sizes inside and out, but the areas would need to be, I think, much larger to really have some measurable effects there. So they weren't, that's not necessarily why they were set up. They're more setting up as, let's have a little more of a controlled area where they don't have, input from fishing. And so, but that, those could be having some effect, certainly, but it's not necessarily how they were set up.
Finding something as a replenishment, I think could sell those marine reserves to a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, true. I mean, and that's the reason I'm asking the question.
Yeah. And as far as, the data I've seen and the reports I've, been reading from our marine reserves team, there are no real significant differences, inside and out. There might be some species that we'd have some higher numbers, larger sizes, and more, reproduction going on. But, they were cited and more as a trying to bring together, different communities and find a kind of a consensus or, an area that would work for all the different people that are, maybe they used to fish there or, so it was quite a process to create the marine reserves in the first place. But yeah, that wasn't like a design criteria to make them as a replenishment area or nursery area.
Do you have, so what is when you view your program, what are your most acute needs right now?
Well, yeah, great question. Hate to get more into the funding side of things, but we have some solid funding through our users. So license fees, permits, landing fees. So funding, but we also get a lot through federal dollars. And so last few years have been really difficult. It's like, hey, are we going to keep some of this funding? We've been doing okay these last few years. So secure funding is one issue. Future kind of needs, we know there's a lot of interest and discussion around reintroducing sea otters onto the Oregon coast. And there certainly is evidence of that might have some conservation benefit, but there are lots of concern how those might affect our different fisheries, crab fisheries, urchin fisheries, clam fisheries, and estuaries. How that might affect some of species of greatest conservation need, like abalone. So just tackling, that's one big issue. That's that we're trying to figure out how we find the right level of attention to those. So that's one big topic that we're looking at.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. That was a very thorough, really well put together
Thanks for
presentation.
having me here.
And it's a great to see the breadth of what you're doing on the coast. It's a big area.
Yeah, right.
A lot to cover
Lot to cover.
and hard to see. I do, just for clarification, those reserves, are they all within your 3-mile limit, or do they extend past that?
So the marine reserves themselves, where the fishing is closed down, are within the territory, 3 miles. The comparison areas are, and there are also some different marine protected areas that might be open to some fishing, but not all. Those extend out beyond the 3-mile one.
Okay, great. Great. Well, thank you very much. Well, then at this point, it's time to move on to hear more from Scott about the remotely operated vehicle. We got a really nice presentation yesterday. We'll see a little more.
Let's see. Okay. Great, thanks. Let's see if I can present mode here. That is going to go. There we go. Okay. Yeah, Justin, thanks for that great introduction to the overall program, and thank you to the whole board here for having us visit. It was great to spend so much time with you yesterday. We covered a lot of territory. What I hope to do today is follow up on some of that with details about the actual project that you funded. We didn't talk about a lot yesterday, the new ROV, and I'll kind of bring some of those messages home from yesterday, and also for the benefit of the folks who couldn't be there with us. When I wrote this proposal this was in spring of 2023, and I put in the title, Evaluating Change and Resilience in Nearshore Marine Communities. I didn't know that when we actually got the thing, the governor would have issued an executive order that said that we are going to go look at change and resilience in nearshore communities. So I feel like we're well timed in that regard. So I wanted to frame kind of where this work fits in the overall mission. And I've got 2 slides here, kind of the what and the how. So conceptually, I want to talk about what it is that we do and how it relates to the mission initially. And I thought of sort of these 5 kind of take homes. One of these is in looking at these hard to assess fish. We've got resources that we can't evaluate very well by other means. Relative to our primary mandate of monitoring fish populations and setting acceptable harvest limits on things. So Rocky Reefs, the video tools are one of the only games in town for that. In addition, we gather data on the invertebrates, the sea stars particularly, and sea urchins are of particular relevance right now. And along with that, we're documenting the habitat conditions, the seafloor characteristics that go along with organism abundance that let us do a better job of actually analyzing those abundance data. And then all of that rolls into larger goals that we have that are lined out in what used to be the Nearshore Strategy, what's now the State Wildlife Action Plan. The ROV gathers a highly multivariate data. When we're looking for a particular species, if we're doing a survey for sea stars, we're gathering data on the entire community that's there. And that's a very powerful way of looking at changes over time in the whole community and providing inputs to other swap species that we wouldn't necessarily be able to gather funds to go do a targeted survey for. So that's one of the aspects where it sort of covers a lot of bases. And finally, in creating an archive, these video data are something that we can use as a baseline should there be some large disturbance in oil spill or, hypoxic outbreaks, that sort of thing in the future that we can come back to to have this permanent record. So it's kind of unlike some of our other data sets in that regard. I was asked yesterday about some sort of specifics of implementation and management things. So here are a few of the how questions of how this relates to the mission. So in marine reserves, that's one of the core functions, is that the ROV is a core sampling tool for 3 of the 5 marine reserves. We've used the data in fishery stock assessments in recent years to help inform the modeling development for the kelp greenling, blue deacon rockfish, and quillback rockfish assessments that have come through in recent years. We've used the project to inform some of the spatial fishery habitat interactions, specifically with a study that was done in the rockfish conservation area off Hecate Bank that we referred to yesterday, where the bottom trawling was closed for many years. And then additionally near Nehalem Bank, where the shrimp trawl fishery needs data on the habitat impacts of that fishery for their sustainability certification process. And we've also contributed some of the survey data that we've used to an ongoing crab fishery improvement plan through the Dungeness Crab Commission. And then just to kind of highlight where we are now looking forward, I feel like some of the expectations that we have about where these data are going to contribute to management considerations are going to be, as now that we've closed the quillback rockfish fishery, we really have limited data for how we might eventually reopen that fishery. So these going forwards will hopefully be helpful. The whole kelp abundance sort of crisis that we seem to be in now is going to relate to management efforts relative to the sunflower sea star and this question of overpopulation or at least high densities of sea urchins that we're seeing now. So these data are going to help guide various efforts that may relate to kelp recovery efforts. And finally, Justin just brought up the question of sea otter introduction, and knowledge and data about the forage base, invertebrate distribution, habitat distribution will be helpful in potentially targeting and then evaluating effects of, if we did have an introduction down the line. So this is all contributing to this sort of ongoing long-term baseline development. So with that introduction, just wanted to kind of overview, we talked about many of these, much of this gear yesterday, but just to highlight, we have historically had 2 types of ROV that we've used. The very large Phantom sea cow on the left there that requires us to be on a commercial charter vessel, and then this much smaller blue ROV that we've used just in recent years, in the last 6 or 8 years. And it is this sea cow that's the primary sampling vehicle, the one that gets us the most high quality data, the one that lets us conduct our surveys the most efficiently, capitalize on the rare windows of good weather opportunity and conditions to survey off the Oregon coast. And it's loaded down with sampling equipment, multiple cameras, lasers, altimeters, stereo cameras, all those sorts of sensors that make it a particularly challenging electronics package to work with in the ocean. You saw the trailer yesterday that we actually crane onto the back deck of a commercial vessel that we charter and have a whole set of electronics that runs that operation. This is historically how it's worked. We'll just tease forward, the new ROV will have a substantially smaller control platform, which may open up opportunities for us to be on smaller vessels, perhaps less expensive vessels, and just further enhance the amount of work that we can get done. The overall system works like this. So we're doing what we call live boating, where the boat at the surface is proceeding along at a nice slow speed, 1/2, 3/4 of a knot, something like that. We have a hydrophone overboard that's tracking the position of the ROV on the bottom through an acoustic beacon. We lower a very heavy clump weight overboard and clip the umbilical of the ROV off to that, so that the weight does the job of dragging most of that drag of the umbilical through the water. And that leaves the ROV on the seafloor to have about a 50-meter range where it can row freely, avoid obstacles, come up and down over rocky reefs. We work from about 18 meters is about the shallow end of where we can logistically work very well with ROV to a maximum depth rating. And that, that system it's a very intricate dance between a captain who's learned how to sort of deploy and effectively navigate this very slow speed transect. There are only a few vessels they're actually equipped well to proceed at such a slow speed. So it's a very kind of constraining operation. The way we actually implement that in the field is with a sampling design that includes 500-meter transects is determined to be kind of the optimal trade-off between on-bottom time and spatial sampling across the reef system. So you can see here this representation with the different colors and a plan view map that you're looking at of the Redfish Rocks marine reserves, how there's this very intricate distribution of different substrate types, all of which may have their associated typical fish and invertebrate communities. And we lay a randomized set of transects across that and then are able to relate the organisms that we view there with respect to their depth and sort of physical context and habitat context. Just an example of the blue ROV. By contrast, this is a very small hand deployable ROV that takes just a crew of 3 in our small agency's 25-foot boat. We can go out for just a day trip and deploy that. It's battery operated, so it comes with more constraints in how long and how efficiently we can use the tool, but it's able to kind of fill in the gaps that are too logistically challenging to get to with the bigger equipment. The data that we actually see here, we get a forward view and a downward camera that looks straight down at the seafloor. So we can use those 2 data streams for characterizing different parts of the community. And then we have an overlaid data review frame from which we extract the sort of what we call the legitimate counts, exclude the surrounding peripheral area of the camera. And then we also have the stereo cameras, which give us the ability to measure very precisely the size of features that we see. Just by clicking on the nose and the tail of a fish, we can get really good size distributions, which is really important when it comes to describing the population characteristics of the fish that we see. So I'll go through just briefly kind of how that all relates to the actual product, which is an analysis of the abundance characteristics along the coast. We have many different metrics, the counts of each species as we go along the transect. We have the sort of status characteristics of the ROV, whether we're getting good data or challenging data that might need to be excluded. We're classifying the substrate types. So here we see a portion of rocky reef that lines up with where these different species of fish are actually observed. And all of these observations are time tagged. That time tagging that's then merged with the vessel GPS positions lets us geolocate every observation that we have. So we know where each fish is in space. We can drop it on a map. That becomes what we call the numerator of this organism density calculation. As I referred to yesterday, I'm kind of obsessed with the denominator of that, which is all the other information. So what you're seeing here is a plot of a whole bunch of data that's telemetry data. It's basically fed from the ROV that gives us information about its pitch, its attitude, its speed, all of those characteristics. We combine that with information about the camera's field of view, its elevation, its tilt, and that lets us derive a strip width for that transect. We put that together with data from the acoustic tracking position. The USBL is the tracking system that lets us track where the ROV is. And we now additionally have a high-tech device that's called a DVL, a Doppler velocity log, that tracks the motion over the seafloor. With those 2 sources of information, we can get a really good estimate of the total sampled area. That's the denominator of the calculation. All of this part of the equation has been very challenging with the old analog equipment, because every time we have some kind of electrical disturbance or a device malfunction, we wind up with challenges in that piece of this. So the new ROV is really going to just bring home high quality digital data that will all be a package that will consistently be able to rely on for doing all this important part of the analysis of the video observations that we have. So what we do with that when we finally have all of that time tagged information is we can place that in the landscape. We have 3-dimensional maps of the structure of the seafloor categorized by habitat type. We can place those observations in place. And that lets us then derive different aspects of landscape metrics like the rugosity, slope, proximity to ridges and habitat edges. And from that, we can plug that into abundance models and habitat occupancy models. And that's quantitatively, that's what I'm really talking about when we talk about understanding Oregon's nearshore resources. We're talking about that kind of modeling that lets us quantitatively look at what these relationships are, where the important habitats are, and over time, understanding change in a real granular kind of way. So that finally brings us to where we are with this project, which is the replacement of that large Phantom ROV. This is a photo of, this is just a stock image of what we're expecting to receive here in less than a month is what I am being told at this time. This is an L6 model of Deep Ocean Engineering's line of ROVs. And let's just do a little comparison with where we've been and where we are now with this new ROV. So this will be a bit lighter, coming in at 215 pounds, a little bit shorter, which will let us navigate over high relief terrain a bit better, with vectored thrusters, which will make it a little bit more nimble, and 2 vertical thrusters, which will let us come up and down over habitats more responsively, and also get to the bottom and get to the surface very quickly, which is no small thing when we're trying to pack in as many transects in a day as we can. It'll help with efficiency. The forward thrust is fairly similar, but you put that on a lighter ROV and it'll be a very powerful ROV. It'll fly through the water quite quickly. The old umbilical was copper, and the new umbilical, we're going to have fiber optic data transmission. All the data transmission will be Ethernet, which means we'll have essentially top quality data coming in, and we'll be able to transmit high definition video to the surface in real time, as opposed to the analog camera feed that we were looking at, which often had issues with interference and graininess, and it's very difficult to kind of see what you were even looking at while you're flying the ROV. That's really exciting. The old data was recorded on a card in the camera, which required us to then open the housing to the camera, and there were all kinds of issues with the electrical connections and water droplets and lens fogging and all that sort of thing. The new topside recording right straight onto a hard drive in the boat will let us essentially seal that equipment up and not have to deal with that piece of things. I showed you this giant stadium lights that we were using on the old ROV, and the new one will have LED lights, which will be smaller and provide plenty of illumination. The new tracking system will be, that we've already purchased under a separate project, is going to give us real precise information about the movement. And finally, the controls, the brains of the ROV are actually housed in the new ROV as opposed to being sent topside. And so again, that electrical transmission challenge in the old system will be a thing of the past. So basically it will just work and it'll give us great, solid, high definition data. Yeah, exactly. It has not been easy. This convoluted slide is meant to represent kind of where we are in this OCRF project. We started here with the challenge that I referred to, the beginning of the end of the Phantom ROV, with the difficulties we were having. In June and July of 2023 was when this funding package came together. I really want to thank OCRF, the Restoration Ecology Board, and MRP, thanks to Justin, for all miraculously coming together at the same time to put together the very large pot of funds to keep this program in operation. We were expecting originally to have received the ROV by May of 2025. That was the initial deadline. Everything, including a global trade war, came up in the middle. There's somewhere in the middle of all this, the availability of rare earth magnets, which are the thing that go into the thrusters, all got apparently in the United States diverted into a Defense Department contract that meant that everybody else who wanted to make a thruster was out of luck. That, among other, a bunch of question marks in the middle about what was going on at Deep Ocean Engineering with getting this thing going. Anyway, it's been a real challenge. Here we are arriving at having blown past the last 2 delivery deadlines. expecting it to be here for this meeting, but it wasn't here for this meeting. We're thinking it's very close. We hope to have this thing in the water by summertime. That is the plan.
A long path there.
It's a long path. Yeah, I started without any gray hair. The next stages on this, we're going to get it in the water. We're going to trim it out. We're going to do some initial testing. We're going to look at deploying it on 2 new vessels that these are potential university partnerships that may be able to really enhance our ability to get it in the water and get it working. And then we hope to have it gathering data for us in the fall at Cape Perpetua and Redfish Rocks Marine Reserves. And then just my last slide here was, I was asked yesterday about some of the partnerships. I just wanted to highlight a few of those. I often conflate much of this work with nearshore ecosystem understanding with our kelp monitoring work and our kind of like kelp restoration targeting interests. And in red here, I highlighted the aspects that are really focused on partnerships with our ROV data. So we have a few with students who have done species distribution modeling. We have a student now who's going to reassess the locations of our sunflower sea stars in our historic video imagery. We're working on a bunch of sort of applied work relative to the fishery impacts out of Hecate Bank. And we're really looking to promote more of this kind of interaction with university and other agency partners. So I'll stop there and take any questions you might have.
You are a really great listener. Say a lot of these questions we had yesterday were in this presentation today.
It seems you'd mentioned your questions about the impact of the vehicle itself on fish, and maybe they all move out of the way, or maybe they all come to look at it. But certainly when you're checking out the sea stars,
Right.
you're going to get great data
Right.
on distribution of the sea stars. That's a really nice way to do that.
We saw some really great video yesterday after you guys left. You kind of went through a reel that was really, really cool. A lot of really neat
Footage from.
footage from under all the
Yeah.
preserves. And
Well, I got a little preview through Riva's phone yesterday. It was amazing.
Oh, nice.
Is this is only available at your facility, or is this something posted at the website?
If you search Marine Habitat Project, you'll find the ODFW webpage, and there's some links to some of our prior project reports, and there are example videos that are on YouTube that you can have a look at, including a few of those that were included in the reel from yesterday.
Amazing. Okay, I would love to do that.
That's a topic that is, I mean, I really wish that I had a bullet here about our partnerships on outreach on this. I think there's a huge amount of potential for that kind of, even crowdsourcing a video review.
There's a guy at the end of the table I talked to.
Yeah.
And I agree, this is great visual stuff and part of the outreach and getting Oregonians to recognize, it shouldn't be this committee that's seeing these
Right.
things. It's like, get that out to the
That's right.
big community to be impressed. Oh my God, they're doing that. That's really cool.
And we do have, there are multiple irons in the fire that we've been developing,
Okay.
probably for too long. That's often the piece that doesn't have as much fire under it to get completed. But
That,
we're working on it.
that brings it for the both of you to, so the OCRF, we have a sort of a new lease on life after this bill. And our mandate is extremely broad. I mean, we can basically fund almost anything we want and across the board, but we sort of have focused a lot on engaging Oregonians with the outdoors. And I noticed in our most recent list of projects, that's been organically has happened that way. There's a lot of community outreach, a lot of community science, a lot of that stuff going on. And so I think what I'm asking you to, you've mentioned that the outreach, the community connection part is very integral to what you guys are doing. And is that so in your view of the importance of that piece, we can help fund specific things, like sea star research or something about a particular species. We can do that. That's been our mandate. But how does that, in the scheme of things for importance, that's part of the reason I asked you the question of, what's your most important challenges? What are the things you're looking for? How does that community connection fit for you? I mean, how important is that? Is it like kind of important? Yeah, we need to do it, but we really need it for more granular. What's the reproduction of sea stars? And is there an answer to that question, or is it a tough one to?
Yeah, it's broad, but maybe one example that, I'd like to see in some point in the near future, whether it be some of this TLT funding or not, would be, some more rigorous citizen science. And I think that would help make those connections. There's people that might have an interest in conservation, marine conservation, but they don't know how to help out. One of the environments that habitats that I highlighted were the Rocky Intertidal. Right now, our current work is very minimal in that environment, but it's so critical, and it's so critical to the overall ocean health. And it's also accessible too. So you don't need a big, large, expensive vessel. You don't need a tremendous amount of expertise. But I'd love to see how we could develop a connection with more communities to do citizen science in our Rocky Intertidals, to do scientifically rigorous surveys of communities in the Rocky Intertidal and inventories. And it's something that there are efforts already there, but I think something more comprehensive and and have one of the main focus to just engage with people on those and bring kids out to the tide pools, and you can turn them into a marine biologist, and that goes for all ages too. I think that would be one way to. That's just one example to connect people. So, and you have another one, or?
Yeah, sort of along those lines. We've talked about the outreach piece of things. I mean, I know that we have a gold mine here of these videos, and we've, you can put videos on YouTube and then kids can watch videos, but there's more than that. One of the aspects for direction that we need to go is that we're going to be transitioning into an era where the video analysis and the extraction of data from videos will become an automated process, and we're in that pathway now. I think that there's a huge opportunity to move into a sort of data development framework that is get video, apply an automated model, and then crowdsource the quality control and additional parameter quantification from that. So I could imagine a world where we have a citizen science program, an outreach program, a crowdsource program, where we're essentially, like, nobody at our group is clicking and pointing on fish and urchins. We apply a model, we get a preliminary result back from that. We slice and dice a bunch of data into little 1-minute snippets where the program has told us there are 3 quillback rockfish and 2 sea stars and a big boulder in that. And then 1,000 school kids across the United States are asked, is there a fish in this video frame? Is there a sea star in this video frame? Does it have 6 arms, or does it have 17 arms, or more than whatever? And they don't have to be taxonomists. They don't have to be biologists. They can provide that service. And we know through the sort of like the data analytics aspect of this that crowdsourcing is actually incredibly precise when you get enough people providing an input. You can weed out the periphery and you can get really solid data at the core of that distribution. So that's a vision that I have of how we could proceed into this world where we can make it efficient to gather lots of video data, and we make it efficient to actually process that. And in the process, we engage lots of Oregonians. And so that's the dream.
I love that idea. And I think that's in some of the work that I do. I think part of the way in which you create some really authentic connections with potentially audiences that you may not be in contact with is to add that aspect of interactivity. Like, what is in it for me? Like, this is great. Like you said, you have, every other person has YouTube, and especially we're speaking about younger generations, we're competing to both smaller attention spans and adding some entertainment aspect to things that, I see how many of you were so excited when you see those data charts. It takes a very specific kind of human to be like, that's so cool. But we can cultivate that sort of interest and empathy and just desire and curiosity
Yeah.
with things like allow other people to be involved in some way. Like my input in this feels valuable. And then you start creating that sort of sense of ownership of a task that, if we, with the right storytelling, you can, make sure that you can let them know that their work is important and this matters to all of us and this is why. I love to see it. I would love to see something like that happening because that is something that other people that are in contact with, extended versions of that target audience will be easily enticed to share with them and extend your reach. So yeah, that's
Great.
amazing.
I also think partnerships are a key part of that because, our plates are very full. And so the developing and administering a project like that needs,
Right.
people who know how that works and can make it run. Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I know that there's so many things that you're already managing with potentially, ever reducing budgets.
Right.
So you gotta get creative about something like this. I think there may be some symbiotic, partnerships that may
Mhm.
allow to lighten your load, but also increase the value of the data you receive. So that sounds very exciting to me.
I wonder if the ODF&W could develop a broader, a lot of different pieces of the community scientist thing are out there, and then have some cohesive entity within the department that sort of coordinate, because it's coordinating, there's a lot of coordinating in that.
Mhm.
You can coordinate the stuff on the coast, you can coordinate the bird surveys that are being done. So those things for us all to think about.
See, I was just gonna say, it seems a little bit of like the human dimensions department of the marine reserve, the marine reserves. That's kind of what they've been doing too. Because just to speak to your point too, I used to work for the Redfish Rocks and they would come down and they would bring the videos and they would show it to the fishermen and we would go have beer and pizza with the fishermen and the ODFW guys would come down and they would speak anecdotes, but then sometimes that would actually relate to questions they had and data. So I feel like it was very impactful at the time and it was, you're sitting around with 6 crusty fishermen, and really listening. And I think that was important to them because they also gave something up that was very important to them. So the human dimensions part, I think that's the piece that's maybe read in the coordination of the community groups and the other parts too, but it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a strong local partner would be one of the ways.
Oh, you have to have that. Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for that. It gives us a great sense, and again, makes it the fact that we live in Oregon, that we actually can talk about marine resources and then talk about desert resources, then rainforest resources. So we got it all. So we're very fortunate to live in the great state that we do. I think at this point, we're running a little behind, but we can, we have a public comment period. Is there anybody that has indicated, for those of you in the public, we got everybody identified out there. Is there anyone that would like to make any comments to the committee? This is the time to do it. And if you do so, let Reva know.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, but yeah, this would be the time that we have in the meeting to open it up for public comment. If anybody does want to provide public comment, we would allow about 3 minutes to do so.
Hi, this is Dennis Wett. I'd like to comment if I could.
All right, go ahead, Dennis.
Hi, just you caught my attention with a comment a little while ago, and that is relating to community engagement. And I work with the Friends of Otter Rock, and we plant as do a lot of the other reserves, plant local people who live here as volunteers. We train them in a 2-day program that acquaints them with all the critters that are there, the geology, the interpretation methods, and the ecology of the area. And so the idea is to engage people who live here to have a uplifted understanding of where they live and what they do, and they can pass on their new knowledge, their elevated sense of where they live, to visitors who come. We also engage high school students, and a little bit below that, give them a summer job. We train them to be docents in the tide pool at Otter Rock Marine Gardens. So this is a model that I think is out there, and for us, the importance is not so much, what is the research showing spillover, so much as, the community is now starting to appreciate what's there and becoming advocates for stewardship.
Dennis, thank you for that work. We're all recognizing, I think, how important that is, and that's kind of demonstrated in the programs we funded this round. And so again, thank you. That we all appreciate what you're doing, and hopefully that will expand all across the state. And it's easy when it's a tide pool. It's people really interested in that. So again, thank you very much for that comment.
Sure. Well, and as far as expanding it too, if you get a family visiting the tide pools who can see this high school kid, a child is maybe in 4th grade or something, sees this high school kid that knows a whole lot about this area. It inspires them, and they remember that, and they may be channeled into that direction for their life.
Yep. It's an important time. Well, thank you. Any other public comment?
Haven't seen anything else.
If not, I think we will take a break, short break. It's now 11:12. Why don't we come back certainly by 11:20, and we will move into Sristi's historical review.
Wow.
It's going to give you enough.
But it's okay.
Have enough time?
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we all come back about 11:20? incredible House bill that was resurrected after a defeat. And then in the short session, miraculously made to happen. And Srishti, I asked Srishti to sort of give us a little bit of background. I think it's important for us to understand what went into this thing. Again, the word transformative is used by everybody up to the governor about this bill. And so Srishti, can you kind of give us your inside scoop on it?
And again, for the record, switching up my OCRF hat for my wealth hat, I am the Deputy Director at Western Environmental Law Center. I do a lot of policy advocacy. Part of my policy advocacy is at the legislature, and that's how I have always engaged on this particular campaign. I've been working on this campaign with my partners for 6 years, starting 2020. So it's definitely a labor of love and also heartaches. I would say that. I think the best place to start this is that like 1 year ago, we all met in person, and that was just after session ended. And that time, House Bill 2977, which was 1% for wildlife, died at the Senate because of a minority report that ran out the clock and essentially killed the bill. And so that's how we lost it. And we said we have one more fight left in us. And so we're going to do that. And we did it. And so it's come a full circle with this meeting again. So I'm very happy you all are here. I said I've been working on this campaign for 6 years with my partners. My main partner here has been Oregon Wild. Danielle Moyer at Oregon Wild has been my thought partner throughout this process. So very grateful for that. But like I said, it started 6 years ago, but I'm not going back as far as Carl is calling it historical. I'll only go back like 11 years. But the campaign, the effort to find funding for non-game species, specifically in Oregon, has been a fight for many years, many decades. 1980s. Yes, there you go, Jane. I was in those meetings. There you go. I was not, obviously. There was a birdseed tax concept, and there were other things that came up to find alternate funding, mainly because ODFNW's funding sources are tied in many ways to what they can fund, specifically money coming from game species, hunting and fishing, license sales and dollars are tied to a specific kind of work they can do with it. So they couldn't diversify that funding to fund the conservation of all the other species that we care about, which is more than 80% of Oregon species that are not hunted or fished. So that's the challenge of decades. 2015, next slide, please, Riva. 2015, there was a task force at the legislature, which was set up to look at alternate funding sources for ODFNW. The task force report came up with 4 recommendations. The state transient lodging tax was one of them. There were others too. And then it didn't necessarily go anywhere from there. That was a report. The goal was to see if we could come up with that, but it didn't happen through that. OCRF was actually born out of that report because the OCRF was set up originally to be the funding source for non-game species. The legislature pivoted it hard to set it up in the structure that we are in right now, which is a grant-giving entity, but that wasn't the original intent when it was set up. And so that conversation kind of died there. At the same time, if you remember, RAWA was picking up speed at the federal level. So RAWA was going to make funding available for a lot of federally listed species, as well as species that are going to get listed. And so with RAWA, Oregon would not have a match. RAWA would require state to have a match to access those funds. So even if those funds became available, Oregon wouldn't have an access to that fund because we didn't have any pot of money for that. I believe RAWA required 30% match. I could be wrong there, but it would require quite a substantial amount of money from us. So that's when a group of us, Oregon Hunters Association, myself, Oregon Wild, Wildlands Network, few groups, got to Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. We all got together and started revisiting that task force list. And we're like, what works from here? Again, so we did an economic analysis of all the options they had listed. And then we all narrowed down to the TLT again, the TLT being the state transient lodging tax, which is what the tourists pay when they come and stay in Oregon when they use overnight lodging. So it's applied at hotels, motels, wherever there's overnight lodging. And so with that, the TLT came up again for many reasons. One of that being the most obvious nexus of why people come to Oregon is because of our outdoors, because of our wildlife, because of why we are all here at the coast. And so with the TLT, it was one of those where the source of funding and what it funds was going to be very clear. I have a few photos there, but those are photos from Travel Oregon's Instagram account. It's like, come hike our mountains, come hunt and fish in our rivers, and come whale watch at the coast. So all of that is what drives tourism. And so we wanted that tourism to invest back into the resources they're coming here for. Oregon is uniquely positioned. We do not have a sales tax, which makes it very difficult for the state to generate funding for something like this that would otherwise be captured from tourist dollars. So that's also it's larger. Not. Good try. Yeah. Nice to read it. Yeah. And so that's the other thing. Oh yeah, that's perfect.
Better.
Oh, so much better. There you go. And then Oregon also has the third lowest state TLT in the country. Some have just a TLT, some have just a sales tax, some have a combination of two. Because of where Oregon state TLT is, it's one of the lowest. And it is also, and with this increase, which we proposed, it will still remain the third lowest in the country. So it wasn't going to impact the state in a meaningful way, even though it's a tax increase. The last important point is that this is paid largely by out-of-state people. In Oregon, it's about 65% of visitors are from out of state. So that means you're taxing mostly out-of-state people, which is a big deal at the legislature because they do not like to tax Oregonians, or that's a huge battle there. So to be able to say that, this is coming mostly from people who are not in Oregon, but come to Oregon to enjoy our resources, but have no way to pay into it, was one of the winning arguments for this. And then lastly, the right size tax. What that means is that if you're looking at an increase in tax so that it's not substantial enough to impact the business or the industry, but still meaningful enough that will generate the revenue you need. So for example, when we looked at the outdoor gear tax, outdoor recreation gear tax, you would need like 11 to 13% to generate this much of money. That's very, very high for anybody to even consider. Increasing somewhere like that's not going to work. For state TLT, 1.25% would generate about 75 million per biennium. So that's pretty significant for a very, very small percentage in the state TLT. Next slide, please. So that's where we came about. If you all remember 2977, the 2025 legislative session bill started with 1%. But the legislature negotiated with itself internally and increased it to 1.25%. And this is one of the very few instances in the legislature where it negotiated up as opposed to negotiating down. And in this situation, what it did was it kept the original 1% for what its purpose was, which was the State Wildlife Action Plan. And then 0.25 called out specific programs like anti-poaching program at Oregon State Police, Department of Justice, funding for anti-poaching prosecutor, OCRF, and we'll go into that a little bit. There is wildlife stewardship, which includes money for rehab centers, as well as staff at ODFW. There is invasive species council funding, and then there is wolf depredation compensation fund. So there were different pieces that were brought specifically, very intentionally in this 0.25 for two reasons. One, it was programs that had very strong nexus with what the whole bill was doing, which was wildlife conservation and coexistence. And then the other part being that these have programs that have strong rural support and have historically enjoyed bipartisan support at the legislature. So it was slightly politically driven as well. So when 4134 came back, it came back almost identical to the 2977 version, which was the 2025 session version. The only change was the 1% that was for the swap got reduced to 0.9%. And the 0.1 from there got to for wildfire risk reduction and community resilience there. So that was a legislative ask. which we thought made sense and also had an access to wildlife habitat and conservation issues. Wildfire is a huge issue in our state, impacts wildlife habitats quite significantly. So that's kind of the only change in the bill. And so if you look at the bill right now, 0.9% was for the State Wildlife Action Plan and 0.35 was for the specifically called out programs. The whole total, 1.25, the Legislative Revenue Office estimated, as I said, roughly about 75 million per biennium, but that's at current TLT. Because tourism is always expected to increase, the revenue is estimated to increase over time, which is also why we strategically wrote it as percentage points and not as dollar numbers. Right. The scope to increase remain. That is, of course, applies to OCRF's funding as well, because OCRF is written as 0.05%, which currently is estimated to be around a little over 3 million per biennium. But that, again, as revenue increases, will increase for OCRF too. And what was like my sort of winning thought as the bill passed was the Legislative Revenue Office person told us that in 25 years, they estimate this to be an investment of over $1 billion into wildlife conservation, first of all. So 25 years, they're estimating it to be $1 billion over term. So that is so significant. I think for all of us who could never imagine funding for non-kim species ever in the state to even have that option. So this is why it's, as Carl said, transformative. Next slide, please. And so a little bit about the campaign itself. Of course, it takes a village. And also because, you know, this is our third time. We had a bill in 2023. We had a bill in 2025. Here we are, a bill with 2026. Cannot highlight how difficult this session was because it's a short session, 35 days, in an election year, and it's a tax. So tax means you need 3/5 majority at the legislature. You do not, it's not a simple majority. You need 3/5, which means you absolutely need more than just it cannot go down partisan line. It has to be bipartisan for us. So that's one of the big reasons why we were having to do those negotiations at the legislature. We built a very, very strong coalition, and I cannot emphasize how important that was. And all the partners and everyone who played a role in that, from hunters, conservation groups, anglers, ranching communities, everyone came together. Our goal was to make it clear to the legislature it is all of Oregon versus Orla. Orla was the opposition for our bill. Orla is Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, because they represent lodging businesses. They've opposed this bill, but our goal was to then show that everybody in Oregon was united on this bill, literally everyone else. There was a lot of grassroots advocacy. Again, this is where the partners really stepped up. A lot of our partners had member supporters who are able to write to their legislators, talk about the importance of this bill in a way that we could not. And then the other very critical piece we were able to do was business outreach. We had over 125 businesses signed on in support of this legislation, including hotels and businesses associated with tourism. So that was huge in the legislature, again, to show that Orla does not represent all business interests that are associated with tourism. We had to have good economic facts on how this is an investment in Oregon's economy, because outdoor recreation is such a big part of Oregon's economy that this is an investment into outdoor recreation. So that was big. Legislative strategy was primarily driven by myself and Oregon Wild, from power mapping legislators to advocacy how a lot of people in the room helped in their private capacity, not going to call out names. And then the negotiations. There were a lot of negotiations in the building. There were some attempts to dilute the bill. Won't go into the details there, but we were able to fight those and keep the bill where it was, which was super important because the bill, the way it was, is what kept all the partners together. Any further adjustment, dilution would really, really ruin it for that coalition, and we couldn't afford that. So that was super important. And then we secured bipartisan support on the bill because of that. We had Republicans signed on as sponsors of the bill and also vote on the floor of the bill. So it's such a big deal for Republicans to sign on a tax bill. I cannot emphasize enough. They hate the bill, hate tax increases. So this was big, but the only reason they could support it was the fact that it was out-of-state people, not Oregonians, and that this was in a way resources collected in urban areas that are going to be redistributed into rural areas, because where ODFNW primarily works is in rural areas. So yeah, that photo I have is from a legislator's desk, and I think it's an accurate representation of what happens to a bill. It goes in and then it gets caught up in the muck over there and just somehow comes out as a law. So that's the summary of our bill, and I wanted to end with a few photos. So Reba, next slide, please. We had a wildlife lobby day for this bill. Over 300 people from across Oregon showed up for this bill. And I think this was the largest gathering for at least wildlife at the legislature ever. It was so meaningful and so helpful to show, like, the people showed up, now the legislature needs to show up. Next slide. Again, more of that. We had this whole campaign, and then inside, next slide, please. And then the folks who showed up then spent the day lobbying in the Capitol, meeting with their legislators. We set up meetings for them, and they went and talked to their legislators about the importance of the bill. So it was so meaningful, and I was so impressed and inspired by all of these people who came from like very far away places to lobby on this bill. Next slide, please. And so this is just the voting on the House side. We were stuck for a little bit longer than I would have liked to, which made a lot of people also around us nervous, rightfully so. And we were nervous too, but we couldn't really say it out loud. It was nothing wrong, but it was just the process that and how it played out in the votes needed and who was going to be in the building on X date versus not on Y date. So it was all of that math we had to do every single day. And every single day the vote count changed, which was not helpful for my blood pressure. And the next slide. And this is a series of photos. So it's my personal series favorite that I want to share. Up in the corner is Daniel and I. And this is the Senate floor vote. As you can see, all the greens are people who voted yes. So we had 24 votes. At that point, we knew the bill passed, and some colleague of ours who took this series, which is like the raw emotion of like, we did it. It has happened. We did it. Next slide, please. And shout out to the legislators who made this bill possible. Representative Helm championed this bill through and through. And his chief of staff was Greg, who's also in the photo next to Danielle, played a big role. So big shout out Representative Owens from Eastern Oregon, a Republican who was 100% behind this bill from the get-go. Again, huge shout out to him. Senator Golden from Southern Oregon also worked really hard on the Senate side to clear pathway for this bill. And not featured here, Senator Nash, who also from Eastern Oregon did a lot of work behind the scenes to make the Senate pathway clear. Also, disclaimer, we did not open those bottles in the building. So don't judge us. And then last slide, please. Just a group of people who were there on the Senate floor vote day, and just we took this commemorative photo just to show that it takes more than one person to make something like this possible. So could not have done this with all of our partners, and huge gratitude to everyone there. That's it from me.
Srishti, that's an incredible story. And a lot of people were involved in making this happen, for sure. And I don't mean to take anything away from them, but I have on very good authority that there was one person, and without that one person, this would not have happened. That was Srishti.
Oh my God. You're welcome away. Because as
You get a leopard shirt. Oh.
Last year, we gave Srishti a consolation bouquet. And this is a victory bouquet.
I'm gonna cry.
All of these flowers are all locally grown. They're very proud of their calla lilies here, and so they're.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, it's so pretty.
So the OCRF, the Department of Oregon Fish and Wildlife, and all the wild creatures of Oregon, great and small. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I need a moment. Somebody else.
Okay, well, again, that's with heartfelt thanks to the historic work that Srishti did for us. And with that, this brings on a new chapter for the OCRF. We've been through a lot of ups and downs. We've had a great run. We've had periods where we didn't get any money, but now we have a solid future.
And they can take this away from us like they did the last.
They can't take it away from us. And so
Not even about that now.
this is a really important time for us as a committee. We have to seize this moment that has been presented to us. And so what I wanted to do today, and not take a huge amount of time doing it, but I wanted to start with having Sarah from the Habitat Division tell us a little bit about the department's view of this and how does the department, we're part of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and how does the department view this funding for the department itself, but also specifically, how do they see this with the OCRF and the role that the OCRF can play? And then I'd like to take time after that, and I want to ask each of the committee members here to for just a minute or two, tell me what you think that we can do with this. Where does this take us? And you don't have to go into detail, but we need to start thinking about this. We need to get a strategy. We don't want to squander this. So to start, Sarah, are you prepared to kind of give us a little background from the department's perspective?
Yes, happy to do so. And just checking, can you all see my slide?
Looks great.
Okay, awesome. And here on the kudos to Srishti, though I can't see her entire body is blocked by that
I hid behind the flowers.
gorgeous bouquet of flowers. To Srishti and to all the coalition partners, I really agree that like what was so amazing to watch through that whole process was how broad and diverse the coalition was. And I think that played a really big part in the success, and also I think embodies what the OCRF is all about too, is kind of broad and diverse people and coalitions that come together to do good things. So absolute game changer, transformational, as you said, Carl. We are really excited about this. I know, let's see, I've been a wildlife biologist and a administrator here at ODFW. My career spans about 26 years at this point. And from year one, I've been involved in the efforts to try and find non-game conservation funding for state fish and wildlife agencies. And I've just seen them come and go and fail so many times. And so it's like, it's a thrilling moment for me just personally too. And to know that there are so few states that have been successful in accomplishing this. Honestly, Srishti, you may know better than me, but I think we're maybe one of three.
Yes, and specifically for SWAP, the only one. That's
I mean,
so
just amazing. So I'll stop gushing on that front, but I just had to take a moment to celebrate that. And I also want to just say thank you to you, Carl, for your leadership of OCRF all these years, but also just in the setting up this conversation today. I think it was very insightful to kind of set with this, historic new funding to like kind of set the table and just kick off the conversation about where we're headed. So just appreciate you setting this up. Let me kind of get to advancing my slides. I won't go into this in great detail, but this is just, I borrowed these slides from Director Colbert that show you sort of the breakdown of the 1.25%. There is a significant portion that I won't talk about today that is just to the department for lifting up all boats. And I can share these slides too. Lifting up all the boats within ODFW around conservation of at-risk species, addressing key threats to key habitats, implementation of the State Wildlife Action Plan. I would flag that there will be, I'll put the details in the chat, but we will have a public budget presentation next week that will go into more detail of what the department is likely putting forward in its 27-29 agency requested budget related to the transient lodging tax funding. So I'm not going to go into that big bucket that's going to the department, but really just kind of thinking about the percentage that was dedicated to the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund, and just how exciting that is for us as a grant program and as for this committee. If you'll recall, we've been biting our fingernails and worrying about our funding for since the beginning, right? I mean, we're kind of we started based on a cost share, a challenge cost share between state general funds and private donations. And since then, we've been surviving on biennial appropriations of general fund from legislature with a couple of federal funding infusions. So we've made it this far. What are we, 6-7 years in now? And to finally have secured funding that we can count on, I think lets us all breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, a big sigh of relief, and also lets us think about where we want to be headed, grounding back in the program's purpose and not necessarily having to kind of chameleon shift our colors and shape to fit the funding appropriations that we're being given. So looking at about 3.1 million in the 27-29 biennium, with a portion of that allocated to permanently fund Reva's position. So that's also a moment for celebration. Yay.
Yeah.
So Carl asked me to just kind of like talk about where's the department headed? What are our priorities and how does this all fit together? You'll hear us talk about some key strategic priorities right now for the department. One that Justin and Scott mentioned around this notion that Oregon is worth protecting. So that is kind of a marketing campaign slogan that we're using to catch all of the work that we're doing related to our State Wildlife Action Plan. Implementation of our State Wildlife Action Plan, what used to be called the Oregon Conservation Strategy, focusing on recovering at-risk species, addressing threats to key habitats, and engaging partners and Oregonians in conservation. We're also really focusing on this notion that everyone belongs outdoors, really leaning in to engage all Oregonians, both our traditional constituents as well as the general everyday Oregonians out there in nature and in the outdoors and sustaining responsible wildlife-based recreation. And a couple of others that we're really leaning into, the Governor Kotek's Executive Order 2526, which is focused on climate resilience of natural and working lands, which recently was released. We're really leaning in, a lot of work that we're doing on that front. And as our commission sets our priorities as well, the commission is really encouraging the department to be thinking at bigger scales than we ever have before. So really thinking landscape scale with the work that we do. And so if I had to kind of name the 4 big buckets for where the department is leaning in right now, I think it's those, which fit perfectly with OCRF's DNA, I think. And this page that you see on well, that's my right. Hopefully that's your right too. That's a page out of OCRF's strategic plan, if that looks familiar to you. So in terms of the vision that you all set for the committee based on, our purpose, it was that the department and OCRF jointly envisioned an Oregon where native fish and wildlife populations thrive in healthy habitats across the state's land and waters, and where all Oregonians embrace their role in supporting and enjoying our state's natural resources. So we couldn't be better positioned as a grant program and as a committee to be advancing and aligning with ODFW's priorities. I think this is just a little bit of a thought piece from me to you on what now? I think it's really great timing to take stock. I've been talking with Riva a little bit about generating for you all some program summaries. We've been at this. What round are we in now? What are you deciding on today?
Round 10.
Round 10. We've been at this for a while, and I think it would be really good. We've done a little bit of this before, as we did when we were putting together the strategic plan. But let's take a look. How many projects have we funded? How much have we awarded? Maybe we do a little bit of a gap analysis. You know, what species have we been supporting through our grants? What habitats or ecosystems have we primarily focused on? What geographies have our funds gone to primarily? And what types of organizations have we been able to fund? And then look for gaps. I think a gap analysis could be a really useful exercise for us to kind of just take stock of where have we been, where do we want to go? As you likely know, the State Wildlife Action Plan was revised and was recently approved by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I think it would be good to just kind of revisit what's new in that plan. For example, there's a whole new key conservation issue around pollution that's in the revised SWAP. There have been a number of shifts and changes to the species lists that are in there, and some advancement in terms of kind of building out the support for the public and landowners in terms of the voluntary conservation actions that they can be taking. So I think just touching base with that would be good. We have a really amazing project that is still ongoing, that was centered in Portland, that thank you to Mauricio for all of your work on this project, that is really kind of digging into and listening to what community members and the public kind of what their perceptions are, what their needs are, how they engage with the outdoors. And there's a lot of learning for the department in there. Would love to share that back with the OCRF. And I would think some other, you know, maybe some additional presentations, for example, what's that climate resiliency executive order all about, and what might be the role for the OCRF? So I think those are some my suggestions of topics that we may want to dive into together as part of just like kind of a year of reflection and taking stock and thinking forward. And then in each of those would love, and beyond these few bullets that I've identified, just, you know, we're really keen to hear the committee's reflections and then engage in some planning for where we go from here. So that's all I had, Carl, just kind of some initial thoughts of where I think we might kind of set the table and go from here. Hopefully that's what you were looking for. And if anybody has any questions or I'll just stop there.
Sarah, that was perfect. It was exactly, I knew I'd get a very thoughtful presentation from you, and I appreciate you taking the time to put that together. I also really appreciate you putting that page up of our vision, and that's really helpful to remind us of we all created that. I'm personally really proud of it. And so I think we're in a really good position. This helps us with this idea of taking stock to help set the stage for us to move forward. So to further this conversation a little bit, I'm just going to go around, and I don't want to, you don't have to give a long thing, but I want to hear from each of you, and I'll start with Mark because he's right there. I want to. What do you think of where we are with the OCRF and where we could go, and what would you, if you had your dream, what would the OCRF be in 10 years?
Well, a huge question. I think part of it that'll play out for me is to hear a little bit more from the department, and Srishti was talking about it as well. What is the big bucket 55 million going to be spent on for SWAP and non-game species? Because I think that, you know, initially OCRF was trying to fill that gap there. And obviously the department's going to have a lot of opportunity to think about how to invest those resources over time. So it'd be helpful at some point to also hear what that is so we can figure out given that, we play a more leveraged, unique role because it'll be similar but different. So I think that sort of interested to hear about that as part of our conversation. I think in terms of OCRF, we're just really fortunate now. We have a base and we've been having some of these conversations offline. How do we leverage the 3.1 million into more against federal resources, which are a little more precarious these days, but I think over time will have their ups and downs, but there's an opportunity there. And then I think also on the private side is, we've been talking about, and in the past, Carl and Jane, you guys have connected OCRF to the Oregon Community Foundation. I think there's an opportunity there to present not only to OCF, but to other foundations that have some interest in funding conservation and the environment to see if we can't develop some relationship, program or approach so that we can feed them offering of projects that they may have donors that are interested in picking from them. And I think that may be just one way to go. But I think other ideas swirling in my head, we didn't talk about it, but wildlife crossings, we've got, I don't know where we're at, but we had 5 million and we've spent some of it and maybe it was swapped with some ODOT money so that it's still available. And on the slide that was shown up there, wildlife crossings was part of it. But I think there's a lot of interest in that. I participated in some meetings in Central Oregon. A number of people who came out of the woodwork was sort of impressive. So it's a little bit of a ramble. I also think at some point, we might want to think about when we have enough money to feel like we want to do this, but maybe have separate buckets that we fund things with. Because this last go around and some of the previous ones, we have a lot of the conservation specifics, sort of species specific, habitat specific kinds of projects. And then we also have a lot of engagement projects. And they're really apples and oranges. It's hard to kind of evaluate them against each other. And I think it's worth a conversation to think about, do we just allocate some of those buckets and maybe climate's another one or not, but so that we can compare apples to apples as opposed to, I find it really difficult to evaluate the merit of an engagement project versus a species project because they're very different endpoints, both important and they both fall on our mission, but it's hard to weigh them.
Well, thank you, Mark. You called that a ramble, which it certainly was, but that's what I want to hear. We need to think of all the different things we could do. And we'll pick through it, but we got to be thinking, we don't want to miss things. You presented some wonderful ideas. Jim, what do you think?
Well, I think one of the things that I want to do when I get back is to read the purpose statements in 4134, since that's funding this new money, and make sure that it's what I believe it is. But sometimes going back through and looking at that will give you some ideas about maybe changing an emphasis or changing the way we do things. One of the things, reflecting Mark's comment about buckets, I think that might also inform us about relooking at the criteria in which we rate our projects and just making sure that that still fits with that purpose and it's still doing the job that we want it to, which is to get, to make cuts in very good programs. I think those are the main things that I think I want to be thinking about between now and whenever we sort of reevaluate this.
Reva, I think that's as you're preparing this report on all the projects, I 100% agree. I've read that. I don't even remember that vision statement, but it's really good. and let's go back and look at the things we've said about ourselves. Try to find those kinds of things and have them in something that we can put our hands on and help us remember what we were all about. So that would be a great thing to add to that.
Okay.
Safety?
I already spoke a lot. I'll keep myself very brief here. I think for me, like the whole purpose of getting this funding for OCRF and for ODFNW comes back to the swap and comes back to non-game species. So, you know,
Yes.
I see a very strong overlap between like the funding for the agency in the swap part of the funding and how can we either complement or fill a gap that ODFNW cannot, specifically with like partner needs, you know, because we do that differently than what ODFNW will do with their swap funding. Because they can invest in themselves and their agency and their capacity, but can we then support partners who are doing similar things that has been determined as priority for ODFNW through their swap funding, and we complement that? That would be really helpful. So if we're going that route and we have the security of funding, then thinking about like priority investments for us, what would that look like for like the next 5 years or something like that? If you want to explore that, not that we're tied to it, but if we want to explore that, and that could be within the buckets that Mark said, like if we want to develop what priority investments could look like in any of them, that would be, I think, a helpful path. But it does come, for me personally, comes down for like things and species and habitats that didn't have funding and the overlap between the species and the KCIs or key conservation issues in the swap. Like where is the connection there and partners working in that space, and how do we elevate them so that they come to OCRF for that funding? So I think that's kind of important from my perspective.
Thank you, Srishti.
Quick question. Does ODFW actually engage in restoration itself or just the monitoring and assessment aspect of swap work?
They
Anybody know that?
do, but Sarah might be able to speak more, but they do from the Habitat Division side.
Oh,
We
right. We
do.
still have a habitat. But same. I forget about that you do it around the state.
Yes, so we have a large number of staff in our regional habitat programs who partner from beginning to end on habitat restoration work in a lot of different systems. I would say by and large, we pass through funds. So
Yeah.
we might be involved in the design and expertise. We might pass funds through or seek the funds through grant writing and acquisition of federal dollars that we then pass through. There are a couple of cases, particularly associated with our wildlife areas or in the whoop, sorry, my emergency is going on. There are a couple of cases where we do it in-house with our own staff and our own equipment, et cetera, but it's typically through partnerships to organizations and small businesses.
That's what my assumption was. That's what I was thinking when you said like, you know, making sure that we're investing in that. Because I appreciate there is a lot of monitoring and assessment work that comes out of ODFW. And I had actually even not thought about like, that was one of our main goals to fund a lot of that work. But now if they've got this money on this side too, then do we invest on the restoration side and project effectiveness side of those things to make sure the things that we're doing, we know work and we don't have to keep looking at that if it is working. I love the idea of separating the buckets because I struggle with the same thing. So I would hear on that one too. It's really hard to assess kids against like audible bats or whatever, you know, that's a tough thing. But that being said too, I do think we're kind of failing our youth. And so I do think us continuing to engage youth and partners who are bringing youth into experiential learning through this, getting them involved with ODFW, and then also some of the career development end too. I think there's a big drop off, you know, when we're kids, we do all this fun stuff, and then there's kind of this loss after high school sometimes too. So I think focusing on some of those things would be a really great way to continue to like bring people up in Oregon to know that they can be a part of this too. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, I'm just like also appalled that like every time that ODFW isn't listed as a partner on like everybody's application. I think that blows my mind too, that I think sometimes when they're listing partners, I'm like, why is an ODFW partner? Maybe you just don't think to do it, but it seems to me like all these projects, you would be really closely tied in with your local ODFW biologists, because you see that from some of the, you know, some of their reviews too, where they're like, well, we haven't really talked about it, or this really isn't a need, or it is. And so I think us also helping with the messaging of that would be really important with our outreach work. And as we're talking to people who are applying, is that this work really needs to be directly related to the swap and continue to push that message too. So that's kind of my quick thoughts on that.
Thanks, Kelly. Thank you very much. Mauricio.
Well, with your permission, I'm going to get a little philosophical.
Oh, what a surprise.
So I have been thinking a lot last year about the nature of anxiety. I've been thinking about how is it that, as I understand it now, it's sort of like a distorted relationship with expectations. And with this new breath of fresh air that we have through this bill, I think it might be pertinent for us to think about switching from a mentality of scarcity to one of abundance. Meaning that when you're not in survival mode, when you don't know if money is going to come next year, we think about what would make the most sense to fund now because God knows what happens. But now that we have this ability to lift our eyes to the horizon a little bit more, I wonder if that changes the way that we look at the portfolio of projects that are coming our way. What could have the longer lifespan that would maybe have an impact that goes beyond just next year or the following one, maybe a decade, and maybe just imagining magnitude over time rather than what hole we can cover on the boat right now so that we don't drown. And so I like to think that there are ways similar to what Sarah Rife was mentioning in the way that we can sort of like clean our house up now that we have the time and we're not rushing.
Yeah.
If that changes the way that we look at the way that we prioritize our funding. One of them could be, well, obviously we can't have both kids in the same room anymore. So we maybe need to look at recreation and education in one way and then species in a different way and prioritize that way. Now that we have the time and the bandwidth to think about it in a different way. I also urge us for us to think about if this impending doom that may come our way in different ways wasn't really a factor in the way that we look at how we can really take this new direction with the wildlife plan. What is it that, what role do we play? Looking back at the purpose that you were mentioning before, Jen, what is it that is really the sign that goes on our cape moving forward? And I think about that thing. I think a lot about how is it that we can look at humans that natural resource that maybe we're not applying the same restoration and conservation techniques that we're doing for other species. Who are we gonna teach to care about the stuff that we do so that we can replenish our ranks over a longer period of time? How are we inspiring curiosity? How are we bringing these people that are completely separated by vectors of just relevance to the work that happens and why it matters to them? I think there's a lot that can be done. And I feel like this new reliable funding could just allows us to just take a moment, not react, but just plan ahead. That's what I'm thinking.
Marisha, thank you very much. Really thoughtful. You got me. I use the term abundance and you think about this transformative for Oregon. And instead of being in a state of constantly, well, this is bad and this is bad and this is bad, it's more like this is good. Look what we've done. Look what happens. You take the dams out on the Klamath River. Look what happens when Oregon Desert Land Conservation gets the whole southeast corner of Oregon. Well,
not the whole.
yeah. Dang close. Just what the positive things and start spinning things differently instead of, oh my God, everything is horrible. Look what we can do and look how nature responds to that. We have examples of that. And change the tone. So thank you for that.
Okay. I see our role as the external funding piece of, like ODFW is going to have a lot more money to spend on non-game wildlife. And what I can see is that there are a lot of organizations around the state that we've given money to that have different pieces of this pie. And this is our committee, our program is an opportunity to give them an opportunity to say, this is what's important to us. And I was just thinking about some of those really powerful partners we have, the universities. We have the universities have done a lot of wonderful non-game wildlife research that we funded. The Klamath Bird folks, Bird Alliance of Oregon, the Institute for Applied Ecology, the tribes, the Oregon Wildlife Foundation, all of those people in many cases do things more specific and more efficient than ODFW can do them. And in our process, ODFW has staff have an opportunity to say, this is high priority. This is really something that we need to see done. But I think that's going to be really important. And I think part of that, and this is a soapbox I've been on before, Sarah, is for ODFW staff to look around and see what's out there, that these organizations could do, and encourage those organizations, like, here's a gap that we could really see you filling. And an example was that once I was talking to some of the staff members about a project that was proposed in the Blue Mountains. And one of the ODFW staff members said, this is, we really need to do more in the Blue Mountains. We're really glad to see this proposal, but this really isn't what we need done. And I thought, well, what if you guys led that conversation and you went out there and said, hey, you guys, this is great, but next time, here are some ideas of things that would really supplement what ODFW is and isn't available to do. So just more of a two-way conversation with ODFW on the people who are proposing for us, but just also a way to keep encouraging all that external great work that's going on towards the swap. Okay, so here's the swap. We want you to fill the gaps. And we know that you have great organizations. You work very nimbly. A lot of times they're working with graduate students. They've got volunteers, and they can do things in ways that ODFW can't. So I really hope that we will examine our role and make that a big part of it. Is how do we give money out to these external organizations? And then the other thing that's always going to be my soap opera is, just because I have been involved in this since the 1980s, non-game wildlife. I guess I just see all of the fish projects again. I mean, I think, gosh, there's so much money for fish. There's, sorry, but the salmon have all kinds of money. But there's a lot of creatures out there in the ocean, whether they're in the ocean or whether it's bats and bumblebees, and there's no funding for them. And so how do we take the intent of this to fund non-game species and help us look at that in refining a little bit more what we fund? So maybe it's not more counting fish because there's other money for that. So I don't know how you do that, because counting fish is important too, but how do we maximize our funds for non-game species? So.
Thank you, Jane. And Jane has, of all of us, the most background in this journey to where we are today. And I will say this, it would be great to come up with another term than non-game wildlife. I mean, it's a negative. It's a negative. Right? Some positive way to refer to them. And my wife came up, she says, wild creatures great and small was what she said you should start saying.
I think one term that's been
non-game wildlife.
One term that's been used is wildlife diversity.
Yeah.
So you can't say that right now. So let's just hang on.
Reva, there's nobody on the committee that I'm not seeing that's here like Lyda, Jane, or anybody, so we don't have any other. Well, I really appreciate all of these thoughts. And again, these are just thoughts. I want us all to be thinking hard about this. From my perspective, you guys articulated a lot of great things, and I'm from a more prosaic view of the committee. I think and Mark used the term leverage. I think we need to leverage this. We need to figure out how to coordinate with the Oregon Wildlife Foundation, with the Oregon Community Foundation, and have a really coherent plan to address conservation across the state. And they may, they want to go a different direction, great, but we're trying to get everyone on the same page. And we could become the clearinghouse of this. We have an incredible process. We have the state biologists reviewing these projects. No other entity has that. That's powerful. And so let's use that. Let's try to figure out the ways to coordinate. And we really need to have this conversation with Tim Grasseth, include him and how this becomes way more than the $3 million that we're doing. And I'd had a conversation with him is we have to be so grateful to the hunters and anglers that have checked that box and given us close to $750,000 over the time. And many of them don't even know for sure what it is, but they like the idea, so they check it. We need to tell them what we're doing. We need to thank them for what they've done. And we need to get them to give us some more money and really leverage that one as well. So I think these greater ideas that you guys came up with and beautiful philosophies that we heard is wonderful, but also we got to get down to the brass tacks of organizing this and making it really.
All right, can I make a comment? And just to add that we will have time to continue having this conversation because the funds aren't going to be available till next year. I forgot to add that piece. The bill goes into effect on January 1st of next year. So it starts getting collected from that day. And Department of Revenue it receives that money from businesses every quarterly. So I don't know what their disbursement method is. The ODF&W might know more on that, but that's when they start giving out to everyone else.
Well, and actually the timing is in many ways is good because we will have time to strategize and talk this over. We've got one more RFP this year. We're not being forced into doing a lot of rapid things. And so we have time to think about it.
Yep.
And so we should do that. So, yeah.
So just based on what you mentioned,
Okay.
there's this like out of the box thing that I think we may want to consider now that we're here present together with. So the system in which we've been operating right now, like we have organizations bring in projects of their interest that may fit within the OCRF priority. One thing we haven't done is similar to that gap analysis that you were mentioning earlier, Sarah, is if there was a combined gap analysis, both on the kind of projects that we funded, but potential needs within the department, that was the reason why our whole assembly came to be. And then create somewhat of a similar to an RFP to organizations with which we already have partnerships with. Say like, hey, this is something that we really need. And we feel like maybe organizations could do something like this for us. Perhaps some of them literally combining recreation and conservation, maybe. I think if we switch the script a little bit, this could be like an optimization of our priorities and our efforts right away.
And we're already doing this with like DLM and the Forest Service, at least on our behalf too. They call us the same way. They're like, well, we need this to be done, but we don't have the funding for this, or we don't have an avenue. Can you do it? And we set up an agreement. Go for it.
Yeah, that would be a way to establish, intentional conversations with partnerships we already established, like the ones you mentioned, Jay.
Yeah.
But also to reach through those networks into other organizations that may have even more focused work on areas of interest and priorities that maybe we can address just by welcoming people into the pod, but just like calling them in.
Yeah.
And Sarah, that would bubble up from your staff.
Yeah.
I love the idea. It reminds me a little bit of Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board's focused investment model.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Right.
So you would put forward kind of windows that you were looking for in your grant solicitation. It would still need to be a competitive process because that's the way the rules are written. But you could say, here are the windows, or here are the buckets that we're really looking. Please come. Please bring your proposals specific to these.
I love that.
Yes. Speaking of which, Carl, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to offer that similarly, I think right along that vein, the Oregon Ocean Science Trust did the same thing. They actually held a workshop, brought in partners and academics and et cetera, agencies, and talked about priorities, talked about funding pools and availability and gaps and that sort of thing. And then the RFP that came around the next year highlighted all that very I'll call it effective because I won one of those, but it's exactly what you're talking about, is that back and forth, and that targeting is very effective. And that's
Yeah, that's it. Setting priorities and getting people to go after them.
Wanted to speak to, because all of this is reminding me of, I received a letter from Representative Marsh, and I mentioned that to Reva. Then I asked them to forward it to you, but I think it's a perfect example of this, of like how agency has done some work and they're doing more work, and there are partners who can do something agency cannot and would be helpful. Like we passed House Bill 3464, remove beavers from a predatory animal statute. Okay, they're not predatory animal statute, and ODFNW has more jurisdiction of power, but they don't have the resources to give them financial assistance to landowners to be able to do that. And that's what Rep. Marsh is asking for, is coexistence funding. But that's something that ODFNW does cover in their beaver action plan, but don't necessarily have resources to do. And beaver habitats help a lot of swamp species. So it will fall in, like, that's a perfect example that came to my mind as this discussion was evolving.
I think it's actually important to bring that specific thing up. I got a letter from her as well.
Okay.
And I wrote her a letter. Before that, as many of you know, she had presented a bill on beaver coexistence to be funded, and it did not get funded. And she, at some point, was trying to work something into this bill, which was just made people uncomfortable to change it. We didn't, and so basically it kind of, I said, listen, yeah, I wrote her a letter. Look, the OCRF has always been interested in beaver related work, and we will definitely think about that in the future. And, you know, back off on trying to stick this in the bill. And she wrote back and reminded me that you said that the OCRF is interested in beavers. And so I'm just reminding us that, yes, we are interested in beavers. And as we go forward, we should respect that. So, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for that. Really great. I knew this would be great. I knew it would be a wonderful session, and I'm really grateful for that. But again, in the interest of moving along, we do have some important business, and I have to apologize. I imagine many people in the audience are here kind of waiting on this part. And that is moving on to our last RFP. And to start, again, we have Sarah here just to kind of go through some things with our budget. Just where are we today? I asked if we could kind of go over that so we know what we've got. And at the time that we set the schedule up, we didn't know that there was this rainbow at the end of the thunderstorm. And but this is going to give us an update on where we are today and what we've got for the rest of the biennium. So Sarah, could you run through that, please?
Yes, absolutely. And Reva, let's go to the next slide. And Reva, I'll also ask you to jump in and help me with anything I miss or correct anything I get wrong. But really the bottom line in terms of where we are in the base program funds is at about 894,000. So that's before you make your decision today. And if you'll recall, we knew that we were getting down lower in budget numbers, and that was why we went with a smaller RFP this time around of 250,000. I believe that is also the intent for the next cycle as well. So you're still kind of comfortably within that 894. The other bucket that we have is there's, Mark mentioned the Wildlife Crossing Lottery Bond Funds. They were originally 5 million. We have committed a little over $1 million to projects, so we have about 3.9 million remaining in that fund, and have been diligently soliciting letters of interest for potential projects that meet the very particular and specific requirements of bond revenue. Funding, it's a little different. It can't go toward planning. It has to go toward implementation. There's all these kind of stipulations. And so it's been challenging to try to figure out how to get those funds spent, but we're still working on it. And that is going to play out in a separate grant decision process than the base program funds. So as soon as we have solid projects to bring for you, those would come for you for a separate decision from your regular RFPs.
Sarah, is there any expiration date on the wildlife crossing funds?
There is, Riva, can you help me with that part?
Yeah, so the funds need to be expended by April 2028. That is the deadline to expend the wildlife crossing lottery bonds. So it's coming up.
And this is we've really beaten the bushes on that and we've only been able to spend $1 million of it.
Yep, that's right. It's been a challenge, as Sarah just mentioned,
Yeah.
sure.
Keep beating the bushes.
Surely something will come up from our last, field trip. We were talking about all the crossings, that there was so much work to be done, but they were still doing a lot of planning, so.
We're still in the,
It's expensive work though.
392 doesn't even come close to funding one.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we have an idea in this base program? Some of that is from the license checkoff. Do we have some numbers on that?
Yeah.
Go
In
ahead,
the-
Sarah.
No, you go ahead, Riva. You want to walk them through the bullets there?
Yeah, I was just gonna, since I can move the mouse here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not actually showing up there. So if this second bullet point
Oh,
is
okay.
gonna show you that the 25 to 27 revenue to date. So obviously we still have more left of the biennium. So, but to date, we have received 85,000 from ELS, and that's expected to be quite a bit more.
So that's a substantial monies that helps us. That's 2 or 3 of our projects right there. So again, it's just something we should focus on in the future.
Yeah.
Maximize that.
In the next slide, there's a little bit more detail about the ELS funds as well.
Why don't you go ahead and go to that next slide?
All right.
Oh, okay.
So you can see that, and remember, this is where folks check off a contribution to the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund when they're buying their licenses and their hunting and fishing licenses and their tags. So again, just an amazing contribution from hunters and anglers. That corporate private donations, that 1.3, those were previous back in the early days of OCRF. I don't want to give anyone any sense that those are new. That goes back in history. But you can see the rate of biennial donations through the hunting and fishing electronic licensing system.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
So that lets us know kind of what we've got, and that can help us inform our decisions today. We went through our RFP process, and Riva sent out the rankings and put in there a line as to where we had already decided to allocate the funding. So can you have that on there to put up again to show us?
You want to jump to that right now?
It's just
Okay.
that.
I might make you a little seasick because I'm going to have to go forward a bit here.
Yeah, so people are aware of many of those. You got a chance to look at them. And it's great when you see, like the top 2 are obviously number 1 for both people. So that's always a good suggestion that's a good project. And then it gets a little messier as we get down. You got a lot of ties and how many projects is there at that cutoff line, Riva? Is there
18.
18? Can you go down to that line?
Yes.
Yeah, there it is. And Riva, I'm assuming that line is drawn in the 10s. And in the past, what you've done is look back at the raw scores.
That's right.
And so those are ranked on raw scores. And the ones that tied with our system of ranking, and then Riva goes back, looks at the raw scores, and then ranks them that way, because it's really hard breaking, see these other projects that have the same score, but we have to have a way to differentiate them. So that brings us to, was that 17, did you say 17 or 18?
18 projects.
18 projects. We have the funds to cover. That is a little bit less than half of what we have. It's like what we have is like 894 or something like that. And so Liza Jane is not here, but she had contacted me and said that there was a project she wanted to bring up that didn't get funded. And she felt it deserved consideration. And that was, so she asked me if she could do that. And I said, well, yeah, I don't see why you couldn't. But what I want to do is put that out there to all of you. So each of you went through these projects and may have some insight into some that didn't get on this list that you think maybe should have, or, and I'm just putting it out there as an opportunity for you to say something. If there's like, wait a minute, that project I reviewed was so good and it's not on there, it didn't make it. And if you have something like that, then this would be a time to bring it up. And for Liza Jane, I'll just say that Liza Jane's having some issues with her back, and that's why she can't be here. And the project she brought up, there's a Osprey cam. It's a Nest box. And it was at a restaurant. And you could, when you went to the restaurant, you could watch the Osprey cam, and it was extremely popular, and it was on the internet, and a lot of people in the community really loved it. But then the restaurant went out of business. And the Osprey Nest is still there, and a local group wants to resurrect the cam. And the cost of that project was $1,800, which is another reason why, I think it may have been the lowest ask of all the projects that were there. And so she said, would it be okay to consider that? And would people be okay with funding that particular project? And we certainly don't have to do that, but we could. And then I'd ask, given Liza Jane that opportunity, I'd ask you all, I didn't give you a heads up ahead of this, but if anybody had a project that they had a lot of heartburn about not funding.
So many good ones.
Carl, can you clarify, or Rita or Sarah, can you clarify, does the 894 include the 85,000?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, we're going to get more on that. So that 894 is a bit of a moving target. So
Did we get a little bit of interest over the biennium on your current funds?
I think we will have, when this is all, I think we're going to be feeling pretty comfortable in zeroing out our account at the end of this. And there's no reason to hold money that you could put on the ground somewhere. So some of the decisions to be made today are, okay, great. Well, let's just hold on to that money and spend it all at the next fee, and if there's a great project, let's fund that one.
So the 416,297, that was, so if was it that's cut line was created just because that is what would happen, the maximum after that lies 25. So if we were to consider the possibility of that $1,800, would that still keep us within a reasonable?
So you guys had, the committee had budgeted around 400,000 for your round 10. And so if you were to spend a little bit over 400,000, it should be okay for your next round to be able to award For round 11, another 400K, right around there.
So where did this Osprey project end up?
It's number 14. It's number
Pretty far down.
51, second page.
Yeah,
It's number 51. So, but there's a lot of 14s, but
it was a score of 14.
Yeah.
We'd be skipping over a lot of projects. I mean, we'd be skipping it because it's a cheap project.
yeah.
That's kind of what, yeah, it's the lowest by far, correct?
Yeah. I really like that project with the Westlands Camp Scholarship, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I,
Too.
in the past, we've kind of come down and taken it down one based upon the same score. I think we have to respect the scores.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got a process and,
Yes.
now, I don't know.
I appreciate that. I mean, I brought it up because she asked me to.
No, and I think it's worth bringing up. I just think we do need to respect our scores.
Mhm.
There may be other.
I mean, it's,
I mean, they may be able to fund that merchant and.
yeah, it,
I like those. Yeah.
And you're right, it would be a little disrespectful to the.
Comment in the chat.
I'm sorry.
Tristy just put a comment in the chat and she said, I agree with Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tristy. Yeah,
Okay.
the scores.
So, yeah, so I brought it up. I will remind everyone that we did kind of do the same thing and bought some fishing rods for the
Yeah.
prison fishing.
did.
Right.
Just because that was kind of a compelling thing, but I brought it up for Lodge Main and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I do think that we might, as Jim suggested, I mean, if we have the funding, which we do, to move down, you know, respecting our process, and we could move down one project. Did you review that particular project
I did too.
I did.
I did as well.
and we felt good about it?
It had zero overhead. I mean, it was just all straight scholarships. It was a really good program.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a
Very
great.
impactful.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Well,
Well,
that-
what I had hard about this further down on the list is the Black Swift project because both ODFW reviewers gave that a 100.
Which one, what position is it?
It is number 34. It's full depth.
Oh, it's on the bottom of that page. Yeah.
And that's one of those great non-game wildlife programs. It's got science that lives.
I sort of had the same feeling with you, Jane. I didn't review that project, but when I looked through the breadth of projects that were funded, I felt like we were a little shorter on conservation and species stuff this time than the other ones. And so even though I didn't review it, that one grabbed my attention right away. One thought I had is we fund those 4 projects, which would put us up, you know, we'd use that up to the extra 94,000 we have or whatever that is, but we're gonna get some additional money from the licensing between now and the fall. We'll still honor that 400,000 in the fall, plus whatever additional change we got. I don't know if there's other projects tied at 11.
No, it looks like those are the 2 for 11 and then it moves on to 12.
But if we drop down to that one, that gives us 3 more human-centric projects and we need 1 more. I mean, I can look at, I'm gonna meet with Tim Gressler next week. And that might be something that between his foundation and mine, we can fund the Black Swifts. And then keep the line where it is. And, you know, see if Tim and I can fund the Black Swift one. And then have more money for the next round.
So
Yeah, I go back and forth a little bit. I mean, the struggle I think we all have is we have a lot of good projects.
Yeah.
So it's part of me, well, these people went through this whole process. If we like these projects and we have the money, fund them. And then the fall.
I think I think if we're going to extend it, we ought to just respect, as was pointed out, on the scoring process. And we do have the funding to move down to Project 85. And that still respects our scoring process and or we could just leave where it is. With a higher number like that, I think part of the reason, Elijah Jane wanted to bring up that one is it was so cheap. And that, it doesn't change our budget that much, but, like moving to the Black Swift one is a pretty significant chunk of dough and, skips over a couple. So I think I think it's clear we're not inclined to fund the $1,800 one, but it's not unreasonable to consider. We have the two reviewers both thinking highly of it, that we could move down to 85 and fund that one as well.
Sarah's trying to come in. I think maybe she has some insight.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. I just am gonna flag that I'm actually waiting for our Chief Operating Officer, Ken Laufink, to finish teamsing me right now. Like the dots are moving, so I don't have the answer to this, but I'm just gonna flag for you that we have 894 remaining. I'm sorry, I misremembered. I don't know why I had 250K in my head for this RFP, but it sounds like it was 400K. So if you do that, then you've got enough for another RFP, but just keep in mind that the TLT revenue does not start accumulating until January, and it takes a while to accumulate.
Right.
Yeah.
That 3 million is not immediately available. I'm asking Ken right now, what is the rate of accumulation? So I'll have more information soon. I don't have it right this second, but there could be a little bit of a gap there.
Very good.
But actually, if we're gonna, whether we spend that extra 20 grand now or hold it, it isn't gonna change anything. And so we're not saving money, you know, we're not gonna, well, we're gonna keep a little cushion. We'd only spend half of this if we were gonna keep a cushion. So,
Yeah, not
Wow.
specific to anything you're talking about right
Yeah.
now. Just have that in the background.
yeah, I understand that. Thank you.
It could mean spending a little bit less in the next.
Yeah, but even then, that last one would be more than what we're spending then.
Yeah.
So I'm,
This one is not, is a brand new, oh, it's been granted before. I see that prior granting.
yeah, they've had a grant. They actually presented to us, presented their project to us. So part of the, for me, it's like, okay, we got this money, it's sitting in the bank. Not doing anything sitting in the bank. You give it out and it's going on the ground. It's doing something now. And so my inclination would be, we have the money. It isn't going to change our position materially for the next round. We're still going to have more than we're spending this round. So my inclination would be to just do it. Move the line down. We gave Reva this, look, Reva, we're stopping at 400,000 and she kind of put the line there, but we could easily fund the next project, get that money to work and still be no really much different for the next time. Does that seem like a reasonable approach to take? Anyone got a real problem with that?
Both of the reviewers are like,
100%.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, I am okay with that.
Okay, so Reva, I think we're moving the line.
Okay, what do you want to?
Line down to
36.
project 85.
Mhm.
And that will make this $436,297.
Right.
Nice round number. So, okay, great. Well, that's worth conversation. I think that's worth having that conversation. So thank you all for that. If we're comfortable with that, I think you probably have a motion written up and we'll change it a little bit.
Let me just change it real quick.
Yeah. So you might put that up.
While she's changing it, does the ODFW's ranks go into these ranks too, or is it just the reflection of our, judgment of what
It's our
ODFW
judgment.
says?
judgment of
It's our judgment of it, which I use, I think we all do. I really respect what ODFW
I do too until you've got one reviewer rating it really high and another one low.
I saw that a lot today.
Just.
Yeah.
It's like you can read the comments and use.
Interestingly, and some of that is like the difference between me and Mark scoring. And one person might really like the project, but he's only going to give it a 3. And the other one is so about it and he'll give him a 5. So it's like, That's me and Mark's scoring differences.
Yeah.
So, okay, Reva, can you put up that, what you have, or are you editing that?
I'm like wanting to call Liza Jane up. I'll be like, I'll get you $2,000. What are we doing? Yeah, we can figure that out. I feel like that's it.
Sarah, it looks like you have your hand up. Go ahead, Sarah.
I'll take advantage of while you're reworking that,
Mhm.
that motion. I did hear back from Ken Loffink. The TLT will start accumulating in January 2027, but we won't get our first payment until May 2027. Expected revenue for the OCRF portion is around 270K for that January to March 2027 period. And we will be receiving quarterly payments thereafter. So
Yeah.
just so you get a sense for the rate.
Mm.
Well, we can always take a cycle. It's really helpful. We're planning to do our reflection. We just talked about pumping the brakes just a touch. We got time.
I don't want to keep money in the bank. Projects out.
I'd also throw out just to think about, like the private forest accord has one grant cycle per year.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons both ways, but OCRF could go to one grant cycle per year also. The only downside is you're gonna probably have to review more proposals at that one time. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And-
Kind of
and
like
it-
having.
That makes less work, a bit less work for the staff as well to do that. So those are the kind of logistical things for us to consider is doing one a year. Those are things to have in the conversation.
It's also something for the applicants to know exactly when to apply to the OCRF every year. It's, becomes a permanent, solid thing on their
You
calendar.
can do that with two.
You build your projects around it though. Yeah.
Yeah.
But right now it's been like, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe now, maybe before.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have something written up there?
Sorry, just one second. Here we go.
It's so exciting. I do it.
So with that,
Yeah.
Oh, I changed it, but hold on. I guess it's.
It would be 19 projects, right? And then the money. Or 26.
36.
Oh, right, we're adding 20 grand. She's working on it.
I think I'm just sharing the wrong window. Sorry, guys. 1 second.
that one said 2025.
This should be the right one.
In the OWEB, we had these conversations all the time
There you go.
about that line.
There we go.
Where do you draw the line? But
Can I do it? Or you
Yeah,
wait?
please.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Carl, you got something else you want to?
No, I was gonna say, this is 2026.
Yeah, but it's for the winter 2025 round.
Yeah.
Oh,
Winter.
oh, all right. Got it. Okay, go ahead. Someone, if anyone would like to read that.
I hereby move to approve the top ranked 19 projects from the OCRF Round 10 Winter 2025 RFP totaling $436,000 or $297 in expenditure from the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Funds.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Great, perfect. Jim. All in favor? Well done. Reva, thank you. Thank you very much for putting all that together. Okay, I think that is, other than meeting wrap-ups and closing comments, we've covered all the things we wanted to cover. Does anybody have any closing comments or anything they want to leave us with?
I just want to say I appreciate the breadth of knowledge on this team. It's really great to hear from like how different our backgrounds are. And I love your suggestions and your suggestions. Everybody's got such great suggestions.
Isn't it wonderful?
It's such a good mix. Yeah.
Basically, it's a committee the way a committee is supposed to be working.
Yeah.
And there aren't very many that work as well as this one.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I like all you guys.
it's really great.
Yeah.
I gotta say, you all are a very impressive body. I've been inspired and just very thoroughly impressed with the conversation, the questions, the thoughtfulness and everything. It's very, very striking.
We appreciate
I
it. I
agree.
think everyone takes it very seriously.
There next time. Yeah, we'll see you in person.
And Reva,
Oh,
you and Tiffany,
Yeah.
thank you so much for making What venue? Now, all through this meeting, I kind of glance over there. There's a leopard shark swimming by. I don't want to meet in another meeting room after this.
Next year, back and see the projects that we did. And the medical center.
The ROV in the tank.
There, there you go. So we.
I want to see if they really move. I think they would.
We've actually flown in that tank.
Yeah, next year.
Very cool.
Well,
Hey, thanks too to the contracting staff.
Yeah. The hard work.
Bob Swingle, who's been live streaming.
Yes.
We make decisions and I can just see your eyes and.
How many turns is that one gonna take?
I so appreciate you. I really do. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having us in your committee meeting. It's really illuminating for us to be able to get out of the office and actually meet you guys and see that these projects are real and how important they are, so that when we're doing our work, it just, we understand the impact, and it's just very nice of you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming.
Too, and it just in terms of like public relations, it means a whole lot to see the background and what these projects do to impact habitat and resources and everything, and what it means to people and how to engage people. I think that makes a big difference. Seeing this whole process really illuminates that for me at least. So thank you.
well, everyone's got a drive, and so drive safely and look forward to our next meeting. And again, we'll start being a little more, Reva and I and Mauricio will come up with an agenda, and we'll start trying to nail some of these comments down and set the stage for the next level for the OCRF. Pretty exciting times.
Our next meeting is July 7th, virtual meeting.
Okay.
And this gets presented to the commission when, like 2 months or 6 weeks?
It's going to commission June 26th.
Yeah.
Right.
For this suite of projects. Yeah.
Good. Well, it's good to get the money out there.
And that meeting is in
All right,
Redmond.
thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Okay, let's go rescue Ann.
Are people going to the lunch? Otherwise, I might just bail.
That'd be great.
Wasn't that on? I'm leaving. It was like, I was thinking about leaving, but it says there's what? Are people going to lunch?
That was in the old.
I want to keep it different.
I might just go. We'll see. My daughter's.
I'm gonna take off.
I know. Hit it on the road.
Yeah, I think I will.
Our PR guy wants a group shot. We need to get a
We'll
group.
be logging out now. Thanks, everyone online.
Before you guys go, can I get everyone to sign both days signage?